All right, y'all, what's going on? Welcome to Tribe by Noire. For those of you who are new to the channel, I talk about fitness, plant-based nutrition, and self-development, mindset coaching type stuff, right? And all of this is the three pillars to work on in order to become the most powerful version of yourself. So we have a healthy respect for self-development because we know that the more we learn, the better we get, right? Because we can use that information to become the most powerful versions of ourselves, right? To really make our ideal lifestyle come to fruition. Now, having said that, sometimes it's about what you don't know that makes the difference. But the thing that kills us the most is what we do know, or what we do believe, because not everything we believe serves us, and a lot of times it hurts us. Now, in regards to beliefs, we form our beliefs in two different ways. The first way is we form our beliefs from data and evidence. This is the scientific method. We get some charts, some statistics, some numbers, and we put it all together, and that's how we form education, right? A good basis to develop our beliefs from. But the most common way we develop our beliefs is through indoctrination, through propaganda, right? Having a certain narrative repeated over and over. And this narrative works because what it does is it piggybacks on your experiences in order to relate to you. And then it gets sold to you that way. And it gets repeated over and over and over until it gets woven into the fabric of your subconscious. Now, this is a big deal because 80% of all brain activity, all human brain activity, is subconscious. So for a good portion of the day, in a lot of ways, we're on autopilot. And so one way, or the main way, that we need to become the best versions of ourselves is to get in the driver's seat. Because if you have a vision and you have a specific direction you want to go, you don't want to just leave it up to chance. You don't want to just have your direction dictated through osmosis. I got to focus a little bit more on propaganda and how narratives are formed and why this is such a big deal. Because we don't really relate to scientists and professors, right? We don't really get motivated by these people. But we get motivated by celebrities and very charismatic people who just have a way of communicating things to us that we connect with on an emotional level. And this is a big deal in regards to propaganda because this is how propaganda becomes real. This is how we buy it. Because to be good at sales, really sales is just propaganda. It's just hammering in a message. And the messages that we receive in the easiest ways are the ones that are emotionally based, the ones that we connect to on an emotional level. And this is why we have the tendency to be very irrational. This is why we have the tendency to have beliefs that we never even knew we had or that don't even really make sense to us. We often have beliefs that when they're repeated back to us, they don't really make sense to us at all, but you don't really want to admit it because it's really hard to come to terms with that. Something like veganism would be a primary example of that, where people have such disdain for vegans, and vegans are just like, hey, we decided to live this way because we're against animal abuse, right? And everybody's against animal abuse. So why do so many people hate vegans? It doesn't have to make sense. It's just propaganda. It's just a narrative that you've been exposed to enough. That's really all how it works. And so if your narrative, if the propaganda that you've been exposed to is killing you, if it's causing you to get in your own way, you have to be reconditioned. You have to re-brainwash yourself. And you got to make a conscious effort in order to change the subconscious beliefs. We got to get into persuasion and sales. You got to understand how this works in order to create a mindset shift Got to understand how the human mind is persuaded. You got to understand all the makings of tying in the perfect narrative to replace the old narrative. Right? Because that's really what we want to do. If the things that you know or believe is killing you, you got to switch out the narrative, which means there's going to have to be some sales done. And so, first thing to understand is it's very difficult to persuade a person or change their mind about a fundamental belief they have. If you've believed something for several years, I'm not going to be able to convince you on the first shot in 5 minutes or 15 or 20 minutes. It's going to take a while. And so any sales expert will tell you there needs to be a multitude of exposures to the pitch, right? To that sales pitch. So let's take selling a gym membership for an example. Exposure number one is you walk into the gym because in your mind at some point you were saying, you know what, I should probably start working out. Where's my nearest gym? And so you take on that first exposure, you enter the gym, you take a look around, you meet somebody at the front desk or a sales rep, and they march you around the gym, they show you all the facilities, they tell you all the great things about it. You meet a couple people, you shake some hands. It's a feel-good experience. But most of the time it's not really enough to sign you up. So what do you tell them? Well, let me think about it. Or I wanted to go look at some other places and compare. I wanted to do my research. A lot of the times maybe you even had it in your mind that you were going to sign up there in the first place. You just didn't want to rush. You didn't want to be sold. We hate being sold, because we have to convince ourselves that something is the right choice for us. We don't want other people making that call for us. This is why we're very weary of salespeople. Sales is such a bad word. Oh, a salesperson, he's trying to sell me something. And the truth of the matter in regards to persuasion and or sales, which basically sales is just the art of persuasion. But the thing to understand is you're not going to be able to sell something to someone who did not have an interest in that thing. So if you need to be persuaded, or you need to persuade yourself into a new line of reasoning, you got to be open to it. You got to be open-minded. You got to be open to the fact that you may want to do things differently. You may not have the right answer. You may not be taking the right approach. So step number one is being open. And so that sales rep at that gym, at the end of the meeting, you get to know them, you're all friendly and everything, you exchange names and everything like that, good eye contact, firm handshake, etc. They give you a guest pass, a 7-day guest pass. Now, any sales or experienced sales rep, they'll tell you, you can definitely close the sale after the 8th exposure. So the first one was the day you walked into the gym, and then the other 7 is that 7-day guest pass. That's 8 in total. So by the end of that week, you come back in and you sit down with that salesperson and you go, I'm ready to start. I like it. I've been working out, getting some good workouts in. I like the environment. I want to continue doing this. Right? Because the experience is a super big deal. Because going back to propaganda, going back to narratives, the only way a narrative works is if it piggybacks off of your experience. This is why free trials are such a big deal in sales, right? The free trial creates the experience. So in our daily lives, right? If you have a multitude of people who are always lying to you, you know a lot of liars. You've been in relationships with liars. Maybe your parents or family members are liars. So when you hear a narrative that people are just natural liars and you got to be skeptical of everyone, and there's a narrative of cynicism, I got news for you. You're very likely to be cynical. Because why not? It's very reasonable to be, because the narrative pairs up perfectly with the experience. So it's a lot easier to sell. Right? It's a lot easier to sell. And so When you're forming a new narrative, it has to be convincing. And the way you get it to be convincing is it has to pair up with your experiences. And so, let me give you one example of a narrative that hasn't changed. A narrative that you don't want. And that is a narrative that doesn't pair up with your good experiences. We have negative narratives that are paired up with negative experiences, even though we don't have those negative experiences anymore. So an example of that would be a person who used to be obese and now they lost all the weight and they're at a healthy weight, but they still don't like what they see in the mirror. They still feel like they're fat. It's because they haven't let go of the old narrative yet, because they haven't accepted a new narrative. They got a new experience, but now you need a new narrative. And so the work is to make a conscious effort to repetitiously sell the new narrative and pair it with the new experiences. So here comes the real work. Making new friends. The best thing I can tell you to do in order to fix this problem is make new friends. Because with new friends comes a new story, new behavior, new conversations, new language, and you're hearing new things. If you want to start getting into the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning, get a friend who is a gym buddy that's going to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning. You got a new gym partner, they're in there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you told them that you're going to train with them. 5 o'clock in the morning, they expect you to be there. Okay? New friends. If you want to change the way you eat, you got to make new friends that eat the way you want to eat. Because the friends you have now, they're eating the way that you normally eat. They're saying the things you normally say. You can't do that anymore if you want to change the narrative. If you went through all of the trouble to lose all the weight and get in shape and stuff like that, and all your friends is fat and they always talking about how they fat and they eating fattening foods and all of that type of stuff, you have to make new friends. You can't continue to hang out with these people. You got a drinking problem, you can't be hanging out with alcoholics. You can't do it anymore. It's irresponsible. And the most important new friend you can make is be friends with yourself. Be friends with a new version of you. And that new version of you has to be responsible with the narrative that you tell yourself. Because I've said this before, I've said it many times. When it comes to your mindset, in your head, your reality is made in your head. Okay? You are the buyer and the seller. So in regards to persuasion, the one who's doing all the selling, the one who's doing all the persuading is you. And that sales rep, which is you, can't just be selling any old thing, saying any old thing. You got to be ethical about it. You got to sell the full story. You got to pitch the narrative correctly, or you will not make the sale. So you can't just be saying the stuff, oh, I don't like the way I look. You can't say that no more. Oh, I'm never going to be good enough. I'm never going to get there. I'm too old. You can't be saying all of this negative stuff anymore. It's irresponsible. And when you make the new friends who are the right friends, they will tell you this. Don't say that. Because your new friends, the new friends you should be having, they don't talk like that. And you shouldn't be talking like that. Because you're going into the old narrative. You're betraying the new narrative when you do that. So that thought may creep in your head, but you don't say it. Certain things you just can't say because there's no room for it in your head. Remember, you got to make the conscious push to reprogram yourself for new subconscious behavior. All right, you guys, that's my piece. Thank you for sticking with me through the entire video. Now, if this is the type of information that you need, if this message really resonates with you, well, I got something else for you. What I want you to do is head over to tribenoire.tv. I'll put a link in the description below where you can request a consultation with me. We can get on either the phone or web chat, and we can talk about the issues that you're having. the goals that you want to pursue, whatever it may be. And when you request a consultation, you give me this information, I'll take a look at it, prep for the call, and then we'll go and we'll give you answers and we'll come to conclusions specific to you so that you can start making real progress in your life and becoming a better version of yourself, ultimately the best version of yourself. And if you want to continue with coaching, and we can do that as well. And I offer training, fitness training programs, strategies, exercise tutorials, plant-based nutrition, recipes, grocery lists, supplement guides, and of course, self-development content like this. So that's my piece, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.